Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to come to Rome and very happy to share my research with you. And now I will present my article. The title is Different Reality, starting from Levinas' concept of human subject. Problematic. In otherwise than being or beyond essence, Levinas may use a Husserl's concept of the epoche of language, interpreting the art of saying, which manifests itself within discourse as the gasping breath of a dying spirit. A right to this thematization is confinement within concepts, or its absorption by the model thinking of essential forms. Nevertheless, this gives rise to a series of questions. Why did Levinas introduce the notion of saying beyond the same? What philosophical consequence did this introduction of saying bring about for this thinking? Moreover, how did the concept of subjectivity articulated through the relationship between the say and the saying reshape phenomenology and the philosophy as a whole? These are precisely the questions that this article sets out to address. The transformation of the meaning of phenomenology. In Husserl's view, consciousness is endowed with an intuitive faculty that enables it to apprehend the universal identity of objects amidst the ever-changing flow of experiences. Through eidetic intuition, it is fully capable of constituting a central determination. However, if one pays attention to the phenomenological description that eidetic intuition offers of experiential content, it becomes evident that the term employed in such accounts may implicitly carry ambiguous, such as or other forms of semantic brain. As a result, meaning that the speaker is unaware of many remain hidden within what is said, only to be heard and interpreted differently by the listener. Against this background, it becomes clear why Levinas will make the following assertion. Aside, reflection would have to verify the intuitive purity of the logic unaltered, the gaze turned toward the objective. For everything comes to pass as though the lucidity of intuition turned toward the object was not sufficiently lucid, and as though it remained in the mind insufficiently awakened. Yet it's only through reflection upon the experience of consciousness that objective terms are maintained in evidence which, by itself and without transparency for itself, awakens to itself only in reflection. Citation finished. Levinas observed that when phenomenological descriptions are conducted at the level of consciousness, they is not yet fully awakened. What is said remains something in need of further reflection. This insight had the following implications for phenomenology. First, if the outcome of phenomenological description, the say, is confined to the level of consciousness and the subject, then the art of comprehending certain phenomena will inevitably result in other aspects of phenomenality being overlooked. This is much like how the say obscure of the very art of saying itself. Second, introducing the distinction between the say and the saying. Levinas had, in fact, already referred to the unconscious in existence and existence, suggesting that the unconscious resides within the activity of thought. Does this imply that the unconscious is already operative within the conscious act of the cogito, thereby provoking the subject's anxiety and doubt? So much so that Descartes was compelled to inaugurate his philosophical construction through the meditation on establishing the subject. From this perspective, when Levinas remarked that the clarity of intuition directed toward the objective is not yet clear enough, it seems to be adopting Descartes' meditative approach in order to doubt the subject that Husserl had inherited from Cartesian thought. By introducing saying beyond the same, Levinas drew renewed attention to the disturbance caused by unsystematized phenomenality to the subject. In doing so, he highlights the influence of subjectivity marked by otherness upon the subject itself, compelling the doubting subject to turn back on itself in reflection. In this way, Levinas expands the scope of phenomenology to include the dimension of the unconscious. The first point highlights the distinction between Levinasian phenomenology and the Husserlian phenomenology. Moreover, the shift in phenomenological meaning from doubt to reflection allows the inquiry of phenomenology to subtly yet profoundly echo the ancient philosophical maxim inscribed at the Delphi temple, now self. Subjectivity, saying, and the human nature. Unlike Descartes and Husserl, who approach subjectivity from the standpoint of the cogito, Levinas introduced the concept of subjectivity through the responsibility for the other, thereby establishing as intrinsic connection between subjectivity and the ethics. He writes, I cite, the responsibility for the other is the locus in which is situated the new side of subjectivity, where the privilege of the question where no longer hold. The time of the say and of essence there lets the original saying be heard, answers to transcendence, to a diachromy, to the irreducible divergence that opens here between the non-present and the every representable divergence, which in its own way, a way to clarify it, make a sign to the responsible one. Citation finished. Beyond the subject link to the say and essence, Levinas introduced the subjectivity of the new side, shaped by the impact of the other. This form of subjectivity emerged in the realm of the unfolding, a moment that breaks the continuity of temporal sequencing of diachromy. As Gerhard Bachison puts it, I cite, tragic freedom to be sure, since it is exercised entirely in the sharp edge of an elusive instant. A man is strolling, a man is being beaten, a man is slaughtered under my window, and I let the response slip away. Irretrievably, even if it means reflecting on the afterward, but first is problematic. Citation finished. Even when the response has been missed, The responsibility toward the other ensures that saying continues to hurt within the depths of my guilt. This disturbance of the cogito, this play or this subterranean thought, this murmuring saying awakens in the subject a questioning of itself. This unanswered question prevents the cogito from settling into imprisonment, from solidarity into a fixed state, or into something resembling a substance. This is why Levinas remarks, I said, the subject already resists this ontologization when it is conceived as a saying. Citation finish. It is this saying which breaks forth from human nature, that calls the human subject into being within existence. The subject that resists ontologization is like a king with the golden touch, who, in the very moment of awakening from the suffering dream of subject, breaks out of being and becomes human. In his awakenings, the breakup of essence is acid. The daughter, reduced to sheer being, paradoxically lay bare her singularity. This absolute difference between being and the living being marks the depths of human nature, a depth opened by trauma. It is precisely these depths reveal the truth, the emergence of saying, and the Levinas to interpret Husserl's transcendental reduction. I said, Husserl's transcendental reduction has its vocation to awaken the I from nothingness, to reanimate its life, its horizon lost in anonymity. Citation finish. Levinas who conceived the singular existence as the human being precisely insofar as it withdraws from essence. We interpret Husserl's transcendental reduction in order to elucidate how the primordial saying manifests within the temporality of the say and essence. This human nature, which is heard within the ethical responsibility toward the other, both constitutes and destroy existence, yet it remains inacceptable to the gaze of the intentional intuition. By adopting Husserl's phenomenological method, Levinas re-established human nature as the foundation of the phenomenology. In doing so, he elevates the non-representational saying to the status of phenomenology's form, while also positioning responsibility for the other as the motive for reflecting upon intuition, even though he fully acknowledges that this move risks provoking a ruptures within intentionality. The ethical dimension of philosophical language and the phenomenological reduction. Levinas recognized that the other in Husserl's phenomenology remains confined within the domain of representation. In response, he sought to explore a form of non-theoretical intentionality, one that could not be reduced to knowledge, in order to surpass the limitation imposed by the concept of the alter ego. For Levinas, the philosophical language that described another person as an alter ego, while ostensibly acknowledging their otherness, simultaneously obscure their humanity and erase the face of the other, as it appears within the responsible subject. This is precisely why he insists that the subject's intuitive grasp of the other demanded. Dual reflection. From Levinas' standpoint, grounded in a profound concern for human nature, Husserl had let the lived experience of the meditators from insufficiently examined, confining the potential of phenomenology to the domain of pure contemplations and the theoretical abstractions. It is for this reason that Levinas declares, I cite, our philosophical discourse does not pass from one term to the other only by searching the subjective horizon of what shows itself, but embraces conjunction of elements in which concept subtended as presence of a subject breakout. Citation finish. Beyond say, which either manifests existence or self pure contemplations, Levinas choose his interrogations of saying restores philosophical language to a model of phenomenality that deconstructs conceptual construct and induce a rupture within intentionality. This reduction also marks the rebirth of the human subject, where in the capitalized moi feature into the singular, irrepressible moi. In this reflection on intuition, Levinas will remaining faithful to the analytic rigor of intentionality, affirming the pre-original or the non-original character of saying, which perceives of origin. Through the ethical dimension of language, as manifested in friendship and hospitality, it emancipates philosophical discourse from the constraints of the same, thereby restoring the possibility of feeling the others appear and discerning what remained unrecognized within the horizon of perception. I cite, our presentation of notion proceed near by their logical decomposition, nor by their dialectical expression. It remains faithful to intentional analysis insofar as it signifies the locatings of notion in the horizon of their appearance, a horizon unrecognized, forgotten or displaced in exhibitions of an object. In this notion, in the look absorbed by the notion alone. Citation finish. For Levinas, the reduction of philosophical language reveals its inherent openness to welcoming the other. As Derrida put it, I cite, as for Levinas, the first refers to the French he speaks in his personal history as the language of philosophy, the language of Greek. Lineage capable of welcoming all the meaning from elsewhere, even the revelations from Hebrew. Citation finish. From this perspective, the meditator's reflection on intuition precisely revealed their nature as a human subject in relation to the other. Thus, this phenomenological inquiry is concerned not only with one's own life, but also with the life of the other. In this sense, Levinas reducing a Husserlian phenomenology open onto possibility that go beyond what Husserl himself articulated on ethical question and the relation to another. By questioning saying within the horizon of what is said in Husserl's discourse, Levinas both inherits and transforms Husserlian phenomenology. As such, our analysis claims to be in the spirit of Husserlian philosophy, whose nature has been the recall in the April of the Permanence phenomenology, restored to his rank of being a model for philosophy. Citation finish. In his effort to transform phenomenology from disciplines into a philosophical method, Levinas applies the phenomenological reduction to Husserl's philosophy. For him, as a method, phenomenology must not only reduce what is said to its signification as saying, but must also reduce philosophical saying itself. Only through such reductions can it avoid allowing on particular versions of reality to be absolutized as eternal truth. I cite, truth is in several times here again like a presence, a diachony without synthesis, which the face of skepticism refuted and returning. A better chart of philosophical research suggests and which it encourages. Citation finish. Such a phenomenology dares to risk venturing beyond phenomenology itself. It reawakens the meditative subject adult found in Descartes' philosophy, and allows the subject, whom Levinas called the intellectual elite, and who is otherwise enclosed within absolute truth, to see the multiplicity of truths, hear the call of the other, and last return to the things themselves. Conclusion. The human subject moving back and forth between life and death must first empty itself so that air may enter and sustain its existence. Through the art of breathing, the destruction of the subject's substantiality discloses a known place of subjectivity, a space where one comes to realize that existence is one through the other. Departing from the notion of the capitalized one, this individual, though coming to recognize oneself through phenomenology, also lost the very position from which one could ask where, thus surrendering the privilege of orientation, as Levinas observed. We find the agglomeration of dispersion of people in the deserts without the manna of this earth. Citation finish. Following the path, Levinas points toward a reality unlike the one philosophy conventionally assumes. One may say that the power of the phenomenology makes possible that realizations of utopia for those who, having lost their shelter within being, are drawn into a state of ubiquity. Thank you for your listening.